Hey guys, Luton here, back for another episode of I Am No Philosopher. Now, for those of you who do not know this series, probably because it doesn't come along particularly often, this series was one I started quite a while back, years ago even, and didn't really mean it to go anywhere. It started off as a kind of principle of why I play games, why I enjoyed Battlefield. And then it seemed that people liked this kind of more heavier thinking, so even though the title doesn't necessarily always fit with what I'm talking about now, it's kind of the title of the series. So today we're thinking about people learning in games, and this is something that you come to realise over a long period of time, that games are actually a lot more than just fun things. They can be really positive social elements. And the trouble is that, like a lot of things, the negatives tend to not necessarily outweigh, but they tend to outshine, although that doesn't seem like quite the right way to put it. They seem to kind of present themselves more prominently than the positive elements of gaming a lot of the time. And learning through gaming is something that I have found is not only widespread and intrinsic, but often not widely spoken of. And it's something that if you have a group of people that you play with, or if you have a wide sort of spectrum of ages and different people from all around the world, you start to see that everyone gains different things from gaming. And this is something I've found myself through many years of playing in guilds, clans, just people that I've played with. And you get speaking to people and you discover new things and ways that they learn and play within the game. Now, a lot of the time this can be things like languages. Languages are something that people are always practicing, and when they come online, that's a really positive way that they put that in. Like me, a lot of you have probably found many times when you're playing with new people or just friends of friends that they may say things like, oh, I'm sorry for my, let's just say English or whatever. So I'm sorry about my English. And it's like, dude, it's perfect. It's great. Okay, and I'll just give you an example of this. This is one of my clan members from VG, the clan that I'm in. And we have a section where people can put testimonials and talk about the experiences that they've had with us in the clan. And he starts off by saying, whilst the gaming has been great, the lessons have been even greater. The clan has given me the chance to improve my English, and he says there's no way that for me to learn proper English without VG. The gaming sessions gave me an outstanding improvement of the English language, which recently gave me the possibility to get a Cambridge certificate in advanced English, giving him the ability to technically study anywhere in the world. So this is a great way of sort of thinking about this. But then he goes on to say things like, he says, to any new members that are joining, he says, being involved, being socially open is key. There are plenty of positions and, basically ways to play within other people that doesn't require this. But if you really want to get the most out of your gaming, you need to sort of step forward. You need to be socially open. You need to get involved with people. And again, that's another thing. You learn from other people. Now, something else that I'll say is that whilst you are playing with other people, over the years, I have played with a wide range of ages and people of different backgrounds. And this is something else that you'll find is that, especially with the age categories, now our clan tends to have a sort of lower end age bracket of like 16 years old and then above that, because, it tends to be just kind of, whilst you're not wanting to exclude people, it's more about just making sure that people have a sort of relative understanding and getting a certain style of behaviour. But one thing that I will say is that I have in the past, as an administrator, you do find that people sometimes are problematic. People have got a bad attitude, or they are unnecessarily argumentative, all these kind of things, And what has been really amazing is that I have had people like that in the clans, and often it can tend to be younger members in a clan where they maybe haven't had so many social experiences. And again, this is not to say, because I'm a big advocate, I hate it when people say things like, the kids are screwing up our game, whatever. Like I've said many times, bullshit. It tends to be people that are like 18 to 30 years old who are the real problem most of the time. You get like the odd younger player who's like a real idiot or whatever. But I have to say, in my experience, it tends to be sort of that 18 to 30 bracket which gets the real assholes. Because they're just like out to cause trouble, right? So yeah, anyway though, but you have often had these kind of younger players within the guild or the clan or whatever, and there'd be a problem. They've got an attitude or whatever. And it doesn't really take very much to kind of take those guys to one side and just say, look dude, what's going on here? What's the problem? And then very often it seems to be a repeating occurrence that they kind of say things like, oh, I don't really know why I'm saying those things. It just kind of comes out, and they get all sort of a bit overexcited, or they get a bit kind of caught up in the moment, and then they don't know how to kind of get out of that situation. And what I've found over the years is that by explaining to people and just sort of taking them out of that situation and just saying, look, dude, you don't need to be like this. You don't need to have that attitude with people. You can just talk like a normal person. You can relate to them much better, and overall then everybody will have a better experience. So gaming for me has shown that you can learn socially about how to interact with people better, and that has really helped as well. I've had many people, for example, join who have never been in a clan before. They've never had that kind of social experience online. They don't really know what to expect. And the other thing as well is to remember that a lot of the time people that play games do tend to be on the whole slightly more introverted. And again, when you think about the kind of time in people's lives, now I'm in a time in my life where I'm working, going out, I'm doing my life and doing all my things, so I have a hell of a lot going on, right? But when people are kind of studying maybe, or they're in that kind of younger period in their life, often you don't have all that other stuff occupying your time. And let's say, for example, you don't live in an area where there's a lot of other people of your similar age, or maybe you're just one of these people that kind of doesn't really get on that well with people at school. I mean, I was kind of always like that. I never really sort of, even now, like, it tends to be more of my intolerance of other people. It doesn't take much for people to rub me the wrong way, and that's not in terms of me getting annoyed. It's more of me just being like, oh, okay, I do not have time for you. So it's like, that's just me, right? But that basically leads me to, I'm the kind of person, I will spend a lot of time by myself, and that's fine. I'm pretty cool with that. Like, I actually enjoy it. But again, gaming kind of can attract that kind of person, because it's always been that kind of thing where you sort of retreat. It's an escape. It's a getaway, right? So then, but being social online and speaking to other people and getting involved with other people can actually be hugely beneficial in sort of building up people's confidence and building that bridge, so that then when they do go back into the real world, go back into real social situations, you have a slightly different feeling about yourself, a slightly different feeling about your character, and then you can use that to take that forward. Interestingly, as a YouTube producer, I've actually found that it's benefited me just by doing YouTube. I feel, compared to like several years ago, I feel a lot more confident in myself. I feel more confident in speaking about things. I feel more confident making my point of view. I feel more confident just in my knowledge of things generally, because I feel the need to constantly like research and look up and find out and sort of make notes and just generally organize myself. So again, it's helped me learn to, I guess, improve myself. It's helped me learn to build on elements that I already had and make myself a bit of a stronger person in that respect. I guess as well, getting a bit personal, like I've always been quite a kind of, I guess because like many of you will know, I'm a designer, but I'm also an illustrator, so I guess by that means I would classify myself kind of as an artist. And so I've always been a more, I suppose, sensitive kind of person, but having gone through several years of YouTube now, it really has toughened my skin up to quite a carapace. And it's pretty much at this point very little anybody can say to me that will shock, offend, or make me pissed off. A lot of the time it's kind of like you read things people are saying, you're just like, you idiot. It's like it's that kind of response rather than like, oh, how dare they say this to me. So again, it's that learning experience. It helps you to be more positive, look at things in a different way, and brush these things away which otherwise previously might have wound you up. But let's get back as well, speaking to just about the kind of more educative side of things. And again, it's interesting when you think about like app-based games, right? Rather than the more kind of like MMO online social, like huge team building games, which a lot of us probably playing. Just think about gaming in a different aspect. Think about gaming from the point of view of, like I say, app-based games. I mean, I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's got his kids, and he was talking about them using like iPads and apps. And these kids are like 5-6 years old maybe, and he's like, yeah, you watch them using the apps on the iPad, and they're just like bashing through these things like psh, psh, psh. They've understood it already. They've got it logically worked out in their head of like, okay, I do this and I do this and I do this. And so whilst they don't have our level of understanding of some things, they've got that kind of cognitive ability going on. And then you've just got to think of it. Think about like when you were growing up. Now, for me, we had nothing like this. I mean, when I was 5 and 6 years old, we still didn't even have CDs. Yeah, so just like showing my age, shockingly. But we didn't have CDs when I was a kid. When I was like 7 years old, didn't have CDs, right? And so, but now think about that huge jump in technology. Think about where kids are now learning about these kind of things, and they're using technology and they're using applications which are being developed a lot of the time through gaming. I mean, all these applications have game elements to them, and especially, more importantly, learning applications. Think about the stuff that was originally coming out with like the Nintendo handheld consoles, the brain training stuff, remember that? And that brain training kind of elements things, this has obviously developed. Whenever people start making applications and games and all these kind of things, it tends to naturally follow that there's going to be some that are just really stupid and just recreational, and there's going to be others that are slightly more educational and serious. And so there's going to be that kind of combination of things. And you think about, kids and young people's learning, those elements are going to make it so much more mechanical and interactive, because people learn in different ways. Some people learn audibly, visually. You can just literally talk about a subject and people will absorb that information. Other people are much more mechanical in their learning. I am. Whenever I had to study and learn, the way that I would learn is by literally repeating and copying stuff out over and over. I would write out, anything I had to learn and memorize, I would write it out physically over and over and over. And it's because I learned in that way. I learned mechanically. So the process of writing was what would actually imprint that information into my head. And so that's another reason why, for example, some people at a learning level will do better with kind of coursework, for example, than they will do with testing, which is why I think sometimes education is quite flawed, because people learn in different ways, and to sort of try and test everybody equally on a similar level it's not testing people's abilities properly. So I personally don't really believe in that kind of aspect. It's why, for example, when I was studying, whilst I did very well overall, I could have performed better in certain areas, and it was largely down to the way in which I was learning. And it was interesting as well, because we did some tests actually later on at a kind of college university level to try and understand more about people's different ways in which they learned. And it was interesting to find that, again, as a person, I learned in that much more mechanical way. And I think it's called like visually kinesthetic. And it's why, for example, if somebody explains something to me audibly and they say like, hey, okay, so here's how you do this, I can often find that more difficult to process, like someone literally audibly telling me something. It's like I get it, but it's sort of more difficult for your brain to kind of process in a certain way. Whereas if someone was to say like, hey, come here, and then they literally say, this is what you do, you take this, I'd be like, okay, I got it instantly. So it's the way in which people's brains process information differently. But that's why gaming presents such this amazing range of abilities and ways for people to develop. It's a real new frontier of learning, really, to be honest. And it's only just getting more and more. I mean, with gaming now, you can almost, and the same with movies, I suppose, but the level of technology that we have now, you can pretty much create anything that you can imagine. So any way people can imagine to interpret a way of learning is going to be there and be available for people to do, which is really quite an amazing thing. And so, the next generation or so is going to have this gargantuan leap ahead in terms of like fast tracking their learning by being able to process things in different ways. It's going to be really amazing. But how does gaming help us learn even now? Well, it's been shown very often, very recently, that gaming improves your reaction time, it improves your hand-to-eye coordination, your cognitive abilities, the way in which you can logically process things. So for example, here was a great example of this. I think I just said example twice, but just don't hold that against me. Tony Mo, who I've talked about a few times, he's a guy that I really recommend you go and check out. And he was making a video the other day where he was speaking about how to get people into gaming who are not gamers. So he was talking about his girlfriend and how he was talking about, I think it was Zelda or something like this. And so in this section of, let's just say it's Zelda, okay, they were going to a graveyard or something, and they had to find a character. They'd been given a clue that they had to go here and find this character. It's kind of like puzzle platformer, And basically, obviously his girlfriend is not experienced in games whatsoever. Hadn't had that kind of learning about kind of the elements and the sort of general principles within games of like, okay, you go here and then this is what happens. And so she sort of didn't really understand, like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing here? I didn't really know. And he said, okay, well, look, we know that we've got to be in this area. Why don't you try pushing these blocks? Why don't you try interacting with some of these things? Which she does. And then sure enough, hey, look, pushing the blocks reveals this little secret passage, and you have to go down there, and that's where you find the things. Now, sounds pretty straightforward, sounds almost kind of trivial. But if you actually think about it a little more, what you're doing there is someone who has always played these games and has learned the way in which it works. It makes you think of things in a slightly different way. It makes you approach situations differently, whereas someone who is not maybe doesn't. And that can actually apply then to other elements in your life. Approach things in slightly different ways. Think about things perhaps in a more logical way, which can then help you in terms of planning things, just dealing with general situations. And again, I have found this myself. I have found that I handle situations better. And I've had actually people that I know that are, very personal friends of mine comment on this, that they've noticed in the past sort of like 5 years or more that I handle myself in a very different way than I used to. And it's because in sort of very maybe urgent or stressful situations, you take decisions in a different way. I'll give you a really good example of this, alright? This is kind of mundane, but it's a good example of this, right? Right now, for me personally, I travel in and out of London all the time, and I often find myself in situations where the transport network lets me down. And I see a lot of people just kind of bumbling around when, let's say trains or buses or whatever it is that you're using gets completely cancelled. I regularly see people at, transport terminals in central London just bumbling around, not really knowing what to do. Now, in the past, I kind of very similarly was a bit, I was a bit like, indecisive, I suppose is the best word to use. Indecisive and being like, shall I wait? I don't know. What should we do? Maybe I'll wait for some more information and then make a decision. Over time, and this actually I really feel comes from gaming, the way in which I have started to change my thinking when it came to gaming over the past few years is very much this kind of one of immediacy. And okay, let's make a decision, let's prioritize, let's do what we have to do. And that really transfers over to my real life. And it's again about kind of learning and shaping yourself as a person. So that now, even when I am in these absurdly mundane, everyday situations, I find that it does actually help. That sounds weird, but it really does. Because let's say I'm in those kind of situations. What will happen is I find myself in a situation like that where I have to make a choice, and rather than sort of bumbling around and trying to think about what it is I want to do, I look at what's happening and I think, okay, what are my options? Am I going to do this? I'm going to do this? I'm going to do this? I quickly analyse probably which has got the best outcome for me, and then I make a decision and then I just get on with it, and I don't waste any time. And often I find that by just not dithering and bumbling and just make a choice, get on with it. And that kind of ability actually I find benefits me many, many times. I just get on, and I often see people like I get another piece of transport or whatever, and I see those other people kind of who were sort of fumbling around just left behind, and I'm off on my way home. But there's all sorts of different ways in which you can interact with games and which games can benefit you. And I've had so many feedbacks from people on Twitter and things in the past when I've mentioned this, and I've said, how has gaming helped you learn? And just so many people coming back saying it's helped me learn socially, it's helped me be a stronger person, it's helped me learn languages better, it's helped me interact with my kids, or it's done this and it's built us as a family. Gaming just benefits people in so many ways. So that was my little thought piece today, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Please drop me your thoughts below. Let me know how gaming has affected you. Let me know how gaming has helped you learn in your life. Has it changed you as a person? Has it built you up to be able to handle things differently? Just tell me in the comments below. Thanks for watching today, guys, and see you next time for some more Philosopher.